Okay, we're live and we are recording.
We got it all.
All
Yes,
right,
we do.
we are ready.
All right, wonderful. Then I will just go ahead and welcome everybody. Hi, my name is Barb Cardell. I am the Training and Technical Assistance Director with the U.S. Positive Women's Network. I also am honored to be working with the People Organizing Positively project for the 6th iteration, which is a great program that is partnered with the U.S. People Living with HIV Caucus and AIDS United to develop leaders living with HIV. We are so blessed to have you with us today for our community conversation. This is an ongoing series where we are hosting conversations with our community, kind of really intended to have the conversations that we would normally have as we were hanging out at conferences or at meetings. And these are the conversations that happen in the waiting rooms, or, you know, not so much the waiting rooms, Zoom mind there, that happen in the hallways outside the conferences, at lunches, you know, maybe even in the lobbies of the hotel, where we have a chance to have real, deep, authentic conversations with people who are living with HIV about the impact that these programs we're talking about first. And actually, sorry, I am just realizing that we have not done our interpretation introduction. And so I'm going to go ahead and actually stop and switch to that slide. Thank you for that reminder. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Ale, one of our interpreters. Thank you so much for being here so we can be a part of language justice as we continue to involve our community. Ale, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hola a todos. Hello, everyone. I'm going to say the interpretation announcement first in English, and then I will follow it in Spanish. Voy a dar, hola a todos, voy a dar el anuncio sobre cómo acceder a la interpretación primero en inglés y después en español. So, hey everyone, this meeting today will have access to interpretation from English and Spanish. For those presenting today, we ask folks to speak at a moderate pace, loudly and clearly, so that we can keep up. For all participants, please don't suffer in silence if the interpretation is not working or you're having technical difficulties. Please message either myself or Stephanie so that we might be able to assist you. The Zoom interpretation is turned on already. We haven't yet started interpreting. We will do so after this announcement. But to access it, you will click on the globe. If you're on a computer, you're going to see a globe at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You're going to click on the globe and select the language you'd like to listen to and participate during today's session. If you're joining us from a cell phone or a tablet, you are going to click on the 3 dots that say more. You're going to select language interpretation and then click on the language you'd like to listen to and participate. And then just make sure to click on done. Entonces, so we'll now say the same announcement in Spanish. Ahora voy a decir el mismo anuncio en español. Hola a todos, queremos anunciar que vamos a tener interpretación en inglés y español durante la reunión de hoy. Para los presentadores les pedimos que nos ayuden hablando a un paso moderado, en voz alta y claramente. Para los participantes, por favor, no sufran en silencio si la interpretación no está funcionando o están teniendo otras dificultades técnicas, déjenos saber por medio del chat, ya sea a mí o a Stephanie, para poder asistirles. La interpretación ya está encendida, aún no empezamos a interpretar. En lo que terminemos este anuncio, vamos a empezar. Pero para accederla, si están en una computadora, van a ver un globo en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla. Van a hacerle clic en el globo y van a seleccionar el idioma en el que les gustaría escuchar y participar durante esta sesión. Si nos está acompañando desde un celular o tablet, van a ver 3 puntitos que dicen más, le dan clic a esos puntos y seleccionan interpretación de idioma y después seleccionan el idioma en el que quieren escuchar y participar durante la sesión Y hay un último paso en el que se les pide hacerle clic en finalizar o done. Y bueno, con eso ya estamos listos. So we're ready, and interpretation should be all set. So you can go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you again so much for the reminder to make sure that we share with folks how to be able to enable the interpretation. So my name is Barb Cardell. I'm the Training and Technical Assistance Director with the U.S. Positive Women's Network. I also am one of the coaches for the People Organizing Positively project, which is now in its 6th iteration. We are really blessed to be partnering with the U.S. People Living with HIV Caucus and AIDS United to bring this powerful program to people living with HIV. And thank you for joining us for our community conversations this afternoon. This really is our opportunity to have conversations, deep and meaningful conversations with each other. These are often the conversations that we have when we meet at conferences, in the hallway, in the lounge, in the lobby, when we really have a chance to sit down and ask how we're doing, how we're being impacted, how we really are talking about programs, and how as people living with HIV, we are sharing our deep, deep stories. So really appreciate having each of you joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and actually ask Julio Fonseca, who is our partner with AIDS United. He's wearing many hats here today. But Julio, do you mind just doing a little bit of a welcome on behalf of AIDS United?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Barb. As Barb said, my name is Julio Fonseca. I use he, him pronouns, and I am Senior Program Manager at AIDS United, working on the People Organizing Positively initiative. I just want to say thank you all so much for taking the time, and special thanks to my fellow panelists, and also to Tiommi for putting this together. I think so often we get called to really share our stories, and that means a lot of different things. So it's kind of because we live very interesting, colorful lives, right? So I am really grateful to have been asked to be a part of this in this partnership with the caucus, and we look forward to kind of this vibrant discussion that we're going to have for the next hour and some change. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Julio. So with that, I once again want to thank our interpreters, Ale and Stefani, for being able to ensure that language justice is a part of our conversations. When we have only one part of us that's able to communicate, we are losing so much of the vibrancy that is our community. So thank you again for being here and providing interpretation for our folks who speak Spanish. With that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to Tiommi Luckett. Tiommi is the training assistant with PWN and has been co-partnering on this community conversation, as well as a lot of the People Organizing Positively work that we have done. And Tiommi has agreed to be our moderator for today. So with that, Tiommi, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Barb. Welcome, everyone. I was just thinking about, as Barb said, I am the PWN Communications and Training Assistant. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am based in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I thought about what nobody really told me when I was asked to share my story, right? And at the time when I shared my story for the first time, I was alone. I didn't have a community of people living with HIV. I was still living stealth because I hadn't met any other trans people at the time that I knew of, right? And so I really didn't feel like I had the support. And then this opportunity came up for me to share a little bit about my story, right? As a person living with HIV, and also as a resident of Arkansas, where Medicaid expansion had just passed, right? And so like a lot of things were happening and I was thinking a whole bunch of different things. And of course I was excited, but nervous at the same time because I didn't know what to expect, right? And so I was in this room for the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS. And I shared my story, you know, and the only formula that I had at the time was from a 12-step program. And so how we told our stories in the 12-step program was what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And so that's the formula that I did in telling my story. I outlined things under each of those points. I had my little piece of paper and I was up there at the podium, right? And I shared with the room of complete strangers that I am Tiommi and I am living with HIV, and all of these other things about myself, right? And had no idea what was in store for me after doing that. What I learned later was that before I even left the podium, people had already called back home to Arkansas to try to figure out who I was, where had I been, who had been hiding me, all types of things, right? Like their wheels were spinning and all of this work that I could be a part of, but I didn't have the skill set. And so that first year, I was asked to share a lot about myself. And I don't think I was ready. I really wasn't ready, you know, and I didn't have, like I said in the beginning, I didn't have that support. So no one had prepared me for what my life could entail after that. And so that's one of the things that I've shared, as Barb talked about in the beginning, when we're in those conversations, when we're in the conference and we're really getting to each other. Sometimes it happens in the hotel room. Sometimes it happens at the bar, you know, sometimes by the pool, depending on where we are, but we get real and authentic, right? And so that's why I have invited our panelists, Julio Fonseca. I have also invited Asha. I have invited Ms. Renae Taylor, because they all have in-depth, real stories to tell, right? And how they're so different from each and every last one of us, right? But we also can talk about the similarities. And so I hope I'm going in order. Julio, is there anything that you wanted to say in your opening remarks, if we're going in alphabetical order?
No.
Okay, then Asha, will you introduce yourself? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Okay. Asha Molock, my pronouns is she and her, and I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I've been living with HIV, next month it'll be 21 years. But for the first 10 years of my diagnosis, I hid it from my family and friends, you know, due to stigma and not knowing what to expect. And I want to say that I didn't even realize I had a story to tell. You know, I thought my story was the one of a negative narrative that society puts on people who are living with HIV. I didn't really understand. I had took some training one time and I had an instructor and he said, you have to let people know who you are, you know, and your accomplishments. If you don't, they're going to assign to you who they want you to be. And so that kind of planted the seed. Although I wasn't ready to share my story, I just never forgot what he told me. So.
Thank you so much, Asha. Renae?
Hey y'all, I am Renae Taylor. I use they and she pronouns. I am located in Memphis, Tennessee. I have been positive 22 years. I found out when I was 25. And I'm 46 now, so it's been a long process. in my first five years after my diagnosis, I PTSD'd a long time because it was kind of like right along the time that they started with heart. And it was people were starting to get medicated and being able to live. But still we were in that middle place of what will I be able to do? And I knew people that were dying like every day, every week, lots of funerals and stuff like that. And so I PST'd for a long time, and the only people that knew my diagnosis was my siblings, and some of them, well, some of my family still doesn't know. I don't think that it's necessary for them to know, but I've been in documentaries. I have done a lot of things, and it's just a part of me I don't share with some of my family. I don't communicate with them on that level, so I just don't share with them, but that's part of the process for me. It's not just, I'm open with people that I don't know, which is so amazing. So, yeah.
Thank you, Renae. I was about to, but you made that connection how you are more open with people that you don't know than your own family, because that was one of the things that I deal with. Like, even though I shared it with my siblings, that's not a conversation that we have, unless I bring it up. And then they're always like, are you taking your medicine? Yes. Like, if that's the extent of your care and concern for me, then thank you for that. But yeah, I am. So Julio, I apologize. Julio is wearing many hats. And so what we're doing is just like giving opening remarks about the topic of storytelling. And Julio comes to us with years of experience in it. So welcome back, Julio.
That was my fault, Tiommi. But the thing was I was like, let me ask a question, right? Because sometimes if something isn't clear, there's no shame in saying, oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that part. So thank you, Tiommi, and thank you again to Asha and Mix Renae. I think I've been living with HIV now since February of 2009. I had the very late stage HIV experience in an era that was slightly before PrEP, post ARTs, and right during the time of post exposure prophylaxis, which, if I had known about some of those things, my journey might have been a little bit different. I kind of kept things to myself in many ways for the first few years of my diagnosis, although I did agree to be a mentor to newly diagnosed young men here in Washington, D.C., which, in thinking about this conversation, I was like, oh, I was sharing my story. It was one-on-one, and it was in many respects, that felt sort of more meaningful and powerful than in some other instances, because it was a very, intimate shared experience that I had with the folks that I was mentoring. I, shared my diagnosis very loudly on social media in 2013, in a frame of mind that I would not say was probably the best frame of mind, and the genie was out of the lamp, and I kind of realized in many respects, kind of like Tiommi has said, that I think within a week I got like an emerging leader award. It's on my dresser, and I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't really have kind of a roadmap or community at that point to kind of navigate what it is that the journey I was about to go on. And so I had some interesting things happen along the way. I feel very much like this conversation is good, because I think it helps fortify those of us that do this work and share these stories, that we can talk to folks who are maybe newer to the space and just share our experience and keep the hope in it for them. But just kind of let folks know that, think about this in every possible way that you can, because once you do it, it's out there.
Mhm.
Thank you for that, Julio. I couldn't agree more, and I'm glad that you brought that up. Like, once we make that decision, for whatever reason, I shared my story at the beginning because I needed money. I really did. I needed money, and I got paid. But at the same time, I didn't take into account like the effects of me telling my story when I hadn't dealt with the trauma behind the story, right? So sometimes I had to make that decision to, okay, let's get this coin. We got to secure the bag. Rent's got to be paid, and you'll deal with that later, right? And then I find myself in the middle of telling my story, just grabbing the podium to keep still and want to make a beeline out of the door as soon as it's over. And so, and I didn't feel very powerful. People were touched by what I said and they related with what I said. And I'm just going to go ahead and put the first question out here for our panelists, because for me, the first time that I shared my story and I felt powerful was actually at that Pacha meeting. That was my coming out in so many ways, right? And so I met other trans people at that meeting. I was surrounded by people living with HIV when I felt so alone. And I was being asked to participate as soon as like I left off the stage. So I did feel power in sharing my story. And it was other times when I shared my story or other topics I was asked to speak on, where I had to make that decision like, okay, you're probably not in the best mind frame to do this right now, but you need that money, right? And so for me, like telling my story wasn't meaningful in a way to where I felt like I was helping someone. It was meaningful in a way where I was trying to like not be out on the street. And so when was the time for our panelists when you told your story and really felt powerful? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. When did I feel powerful? Oh, I think anytime I tell my story, not as a victim, because I never want people to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for myself. So I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. I think I feel most powerful. It's like when it's over and people come up to me and they talk to me and they start sharing their story or tell me about someone in their family that's living with HIV. And so that makes me feel powerful because I know that I'm connecting with people. And so one time I was speaking at an event and I was so afraid and I just looked over in the corner and it was a lady and I could read her mouth and she said, thank you, thank you, thank you. She kept thanking me and we looked at each other and it was like an unspoken language. It's like we knew. And that made me feel powerful at that particular time. So that's when I feel most powerful.
Thank you.
I can go next. I think it's interesting because I did a little bit of reflection on this, and I think that much like Asha, it's in those moments of sort of community more so than anywhere else. I can think of the first time I did the storytelling session at AIDS Watch, and I just remember seeing folks who were kind of newer to the space realizing, wait a minute, I actually am an expert. Like I have something I can bring to the table. And telling folks as well that, we don't come out of like a little plastic box doing this perfectly, but that, there's opportunities and community and people that, if there's somebody that you see that you kind of connect with, talk to that person. And continue to feel kind of the hope in kind of what is being shared. But it is definitely those moments where you see folks realize that even if they're not maybe ready to go up on Capitol Hill just yet and share their story, that there is some power to being able to kind of talk about their experiences.
Well, for me, I'm well connected locally, and every year we have a citywide HIV conference by from the health department, and I was working for an agency, and they did a whole thing. It was like when trans folks was new, and everybody was on like transgender presentations and representation, and they did the presentation, and we talked a little bit, and I always say, I don't know if I'm going to share until I get into a space, and I have to feel the energy in the room if I'm motivated or if something says go ahead and talk about it. So I had one of those moments at this conference that came over me, and I talked a little bit, and it was and actually the conference was put on at a church of all places, and so we had a lot of church people that may have not even known. And they was like, "Oh, you look so well," and I was like, "This is not a monolith. We don't. You know, you cannot tell. This is not how it happens." And there was this one person that got up, and they was like, "I think I'm transgender," and someone had quoted a Bible quote, and I was like, "Okay, let's break that one down," you know. And it was a quote about is that thy eye is thy hand of envy, cast it away. And I was like, the Bible implicates for a sex change. So I said, let's change the eye and the hand to the penis and whatever. And it says that if it offends thee, cast it away. So somebody was like, so later on, the lady came up to me and she's like, baby, you a slick one. She said, you took that scripture and you twisted and made it into something to mean that the Bible validates having sex change. I said, people cherry pick the Bible all the time. I just took the word and changed it to mean that it says we can have a sex change because it's penis offense, we cast it away. So I felt powerful that people came up to me and was like, you know your scripture, you a slick one. And I enjoyed that. But it's but it's also talking to people that think that because you have HIV that you're not spiritual, that you're not connected, that you're not godly, and that you're not whole. And that's when I feel the most powerful, when I get people to see my humanity without telling my story.
Thank you so much for adding that. I agree. I have had that moment where something that I said resonated with someone, and feeling really powerful a few times, right? One was like actually when I was asked to speak in New Orleans. I had no clue what I was going to say. I really didn't. They really just wanted me there, so they paid for me to be there, right? And so I'm speaking, and something that I said resonated with one of the audience members so much so that there was a call to action after that, right? Because I'm like, how is it? And I was really happy, like, how is it? But a little sad at the same time, because how is it that someone who is a member of your constituency is not heard until someone who comes from out of state says it? You know what I'm saying? So so that was one of the times when I really felt powerful as well, like in sharing my story, even though I was talking about some really traumatic events, because more often than not, that's what people want to hear. They're not even trying to hear like how we are after the trauma, right? Like they want to hear about the trauma, and I don't know who coined it, but I've heard trauma porn and advocacy for years. And so after that first like year and a half, I was fed up with me. You know what I'm saying? Like sharing my story. So it's like, what can I do for the community, because now after sharing my story, I have this community of people living with HIV. I have this community of trans people. I have this community of Black people. I have this community of people of color. You know what I'm saying? Like, how can I be more effective in telling my story, right? And even when in those times when I don't feel powerful, have any of you ever had a moment where you didn't feel powerful in telling your story? And if you share what you are comfortable with sharing.
Tiommi, I think it's great that you talk about the trauma aspect of things. I just feel like culturally we've shifted, and I don't know since when exactly, but it has to be some of the most jarring details for people to pay attention to certain things. And, you know, and at first that was something that kind of, I think I felt like in order to like catch people's attention, I felt like I needed to do that. And that was also in a time when I had not had 2 years of trauma-informed therapy, which I recommend to everybody that is either living with HIV, is a person of color, or living at the intersections of all of the things, right? Because we just collectively live daily trauma, just walking out of our houses. And so I think I kind of realized that I didn't want to do that anymore. And I also never answer the question if somebody's like, well, do you know how you got it? Why does it matter? Because are you going to change your value of me depending on how I acquired HIV, right? So I kind of cut that off at the pass. But I was thinking about this question. One of the times where I told my story and I did not feel powerful was actually this past World AIDS Day. I had been voluntold that I would be giving a presentation at an organization that was like a company that was doing like a lunch and learn for their employees. And they actually did a really good job. They met with us beforehand and we kind of talked about language, because there was like one piece of language where I was like, eh. But what I realized after was it just felt very, I don't know, I just didn't feel like I connected to anything. You know, I felt like I came in, told a story, and that was that. And we're also in a virtual space, so that may have been an impact of it as well, is that you're not gauging sort of eye-to-eye reactions or having the people come up to you after. But it made me feel a little ick. And nobody did anything wrong. Nothing bad happened. I just didn't feel like I had contributed in a meaningful way to something. Who knows? Maybe somebody went out and got tested. Maybe somebody shared their status or felt comfort in knowledge. I don't know that follow-up of it. So I think I realized that for events to be a part of, I want to kind of have that other stuff. So I have kind of that feedback. And if I get asked to do something like that again, I probably can say no, because I know that if it doesn't have those things, that it's not going to feel right for me.
Can I get the question again?
When was the time when you told your story and did not feel powerful?
It's actually, it wasn't me, but I was at a conference and they were like showing the progression of like HIV care, and they had those names, and they had a few people that like was telling the stories, and it was impactful, but it was also traumatic to some of us that live, because some of our friends are not here with us. We're long-term survivors that lost a generation of people that we don't know what their potential was and how it could affect us if they were here, that whole generation of folks. And people were like in the hallway, literally sobbing. And I was like, where is the counseling piece for this, because it's traumatic for us, because sometimes we have that survivor's remorse for outliving people and people not being around. And you sometimes feel guilty that you're still here or not. So that's the times that I don't feel powerful at all. I feel like, hey, but I'm still here. So, you know, but I still don't feel, I feel like sometimes there should be a tragedy, trauma tax attached to the stories, because also being a non-binary trans person, like you think about the things that cis people want to hear from trans people, and a lot of times they don't want you to be happy. They want you to be a tragic trans person. And I'm like, I can be tragic for a cool, because it keeps me from doing other things to pay my bills. So that whole being tragic and they want you to be proud, you know, don't be proud, don't be too proud, you know. That's what I don't feel about.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that.
Well, for me, I guess I didn't feel powerful when I wasn't ready to tell my story. Sometimes people will, you know, will think that you're ready, you know, they want you to do it, but you know, you go along with it, but you're not really ready. And I would say 2 articles that were in the Philadelphia Daily News, I didn't think I was ready for that. And I think that sometimes you can't really control what a reporter is going to write. And so, you know, it's like I have learned over the years to try to control that narrative a little bit by using storytelling techniques. You know, I'm going to tell you the beginning, I'm going to tell you the middle, I'm going to tell you the end, and I like happy endings. You're going to get a happy ending with that. Okay, it's going to have a story arc. So, you know, it's like what I tell you, you have no choice to print it. And so this was a learning process for me over the years. Yes, to be ready for it.
Wow. I speaking of articles, so I had shared my story, right? And so my story became public through a magazine that I was an interview for. So they had spoken to other people who were in the HIV community. They had grabbed quotes from other journalists, whom at the time I'd only spoken to one, right? And so, and then like my picture was on the cover of this magazine, and so it hit social media, you know, and so that's when I really didn't feel powerful. I felt like I didn't have control over the narrative, as you so eloquently stated, Asha, because I wasn't ready. And to this day, no one talked to me. None of my words were there except for by way of what I had said to another journalist, right? And so I was completely blindsided. And to have to go through so many explanations as to how I'm not dying any faster than anyone else, you know, I think that we're all dying at the same rate, you know, the older that we get, right? Until our time expires. And so it was really, really traumatic and having to go through that. I was trying to delete it from social media. Like I said, I just wasn't ready. I was not ready, and no one had prepared me for that, right? And so I'm really glad that we're having this conversation because, you know, we really want advocates coming behind us to actually like know what could potentially be in store. And so some people will take what you said and run with it, you know, and there was nothing that I could do about it. Like it was there. And so I turned what I felt at the time was a really bad thing to happen in my life into a plus. And so I realized that, you know, I wouldn't have to keep doing all of this disclosing, or as we say at PWN, sharing of my status, right? Because it was in print and people were sharing it. Like everyone that was in my circle knew. And so it was really traumatic, like to have to go through that. And so I sought help to try to get it taken down, just because I wasn't ready. Like how will you tell my story before I'm ready? I can't control the narrative. And so what I learned from that is that, like, in sharing my story, I'm going to have some funny moments in there. If you're asking how I contracted HIV, I contracted it very happily at the time, because I was in a state of bliss. And so, like, I'm going to add some humor to it. And it does, like, it makes it less heavy for me. Right. And I think that that's a defense mechanism that I have, to not make a joke of everything, but try to not make everything be so heavy. And so for me, humor works in when I'm sharing my story, right? And so, but has there ever been a time when you have shared your story for a call to action, where you knew that it was just like, it was bigger than you, right? This whole thing is bigger than me. I might just be the vessel, but this is what I can do with it.
Okay, I can go first. I would say there's an article that came out in Pies magazine. I think it was 2014, and it was called Midlife Virus. And it was about older people contracting HIV, because I contracted when I was 50 and I'll be 71 this year. And so what this article was about, it was several people were interviewed, several older people were interviewed, seasoned people, I would say. And so what it did was highlight the challenges and resiliency of being older, having HIV, and having to deal with ageism at the same time, because as being an elder person, sometimes in the HIV community, as in the regular community, we're not really we're not, we disregard it. We're not important. We can't even do clinical trials. You got to be, it stops at 65. That used to bug me. I'm like, what, 60, 65, 64? Like, what's wrong with the rest of us? So that was a good article, because everybody talked about the challenges that they face being an older person and, living with HIV, and how people think that you should know better because you're older, and, and so, and then another time, my documentary, Fuel for the Fire, HIV Stigma in the Black Community. And I chose the title that because I have to draw from what I know, and that's the Black community. And so actually, I wanted to talk about the stigma, because we know that the stigma is in every community, but especially in the Black community, the stigma is still there. You have people that still believe that Magic Johnson is cured. They still believe that. So I just wanted to highlight that and have some people talk about the stigma that they face, hopefully to re-spark the conversations in the Black community, especially now when all the emphasis is on COVID and nobody even talks about HIV anymore. Seems like it's not newsworthy. So I use that form of media to try to highlight a cause.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to go next? Or they have a response?
Tiommi, can you paraphrase the question again real quick?
Yes. When was the time when you used your story for a call to action?
Yes, I was thinking about this one instance at a CDC meeting at the CDC. on the anniversary of the publication of the MMWR. Somehow, as a part of this cooperative agreement, we were there on campus that day when this particular thing happened. And I had this moment where I thought about Barb, thought about you, I thought about people that I had seen that, and all of those that came before us that didn't make it when this thing kept happening in this meeting, where one of the lead, very important, very well-known directors, clinicians, kept referring to people with HIV as infected. And I had this moment where, you know how you sometimes you just want to go through your day and maybe not have everything be a teachable moment. You know, when you're like at Starbucks and you hear somebody say something stupid and you're like, I'm just going to listen to Beyonce on the, Muzak and try to turn up my earbuds or whatever. So some days you can just like go about your day and not have everything be a teachable moment. But this was on this particular day, in this particular setting, this thing kept happening. And I knew that I was not the only person living with HIV in the room. And I had to like kind of find the right time, but I raised my hand. My hand was actually shaking. And I think my project officer knew, oh, it's about, she could tell what was about to happen. And I just said, look, we're talking about communication strategies on how to engage communities, and you keep referring to people like me as infected. And I have not considered myself to be infected for a very long time. I am a person living with HIV. Much as people live with hypertension, heart disease, and everything else that people live with that are chronic conditions. And I got an apology right from the podium, right in the room. And no one else, I could tell that other folks could feel sort of the reverence of it. And we were actually, me and my colleague were closing out the day. And I got to kind of acknowledge that and the importance of that. And it's, but when you're like terrified, like when you're absolutely like quivering, you're shaking, and you've told the story before. You've been in front of rooms of people and you've done it, but those people were family, and they're people that share, a lot of your experiences in those intersections. And I just couldn't let that one go. And I noticed for the next 2 days, it had an impact, because people definitely, if they started to, they changed the way they said it. And so that felt good, though. It felt good because it was an acknowledgement of, saying, no, this is not, I'm right here, and you're not going to do this to me.
Yep, sounds like a lot of the stories about people living with HIV and their clinicians, right? They tend to say the wrong thing. And so we are the subject matter experts. So thank you for bringing that example. Before I go to Renae, I see that Chris has their hand raised. Chris, is there something that you wanted to add to the conversation?
I guess my biggest question would be how to like utilize your story. So I want to go like Capitol Hill. I want to get involved, because you hear stories about New Sean Williams, and time again within my own community, I run into individuals who you can clearly see like this whole chastisement that's been put upon them, and some I guess I kind of feel subject to some of these crazy happenstances that come along with this process, I guess is what I could call it, from discovering your status to, going about life and disclosing and just, when is a right time and when isn't, and who should I tell and who shouldn't I tell. But then, it almost becomes like a something that you have to, like, I'm gay and I'm proud, and I have a total crazy shape on sexuality and reality, and they are shaped. One amazing thing is I stand by my trans sisters, because one, I have met one of the most amazing individuals. She was hermaphrodite. Me and this individual became so close in a short amount of time. And I think my higher power and whatever being brought us into existence, because that was an amazing moment. But sorry, I just rambled. But I guess like, it's hard to speak on some things like when you have this battle with reality sometimes. And I feel like, you know, one of my biggest things I had to learn through life was, you know, being comfortable with who I am and dealing with the traumas that I had. But I always felt like I did those on my own. And I felt so like cast down from even members that I knew were in my own community and who knew of me. And sometimes I think a lot of that was drug fueled or maybe wrong decisions. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, when you suffer with addiction and among mental health disorders and problems, you can see why we oftentimes have a hard time of being comfortable and being in tune with a true reality. But when you do sit back and you're silent and you're trying to process this and be effective as possible in your mission and the changes that you want to see brought about, not only for others, but for yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, what violations can I keep continuing allowing to happen by strangers, by loved ones, by friends, like acquaintances? You have to at some point start getting in touch with, okay, maybe I was so far lost in unrealistic reality. I don't know where I was, but when I start to notice things that question my reality, I can't help but speak on that. And I feel like I need a platform, and the biggest way that I could say that I could do that is to pair with individuals, and I want it to be like a video series, kind of like Robert Shuttle, how he did. That whole crime series, that was amazing, and that was a huge turning point for me, really, in understanding. And I've seen many of you on the covers of Pause magazine. I do read, and I am a fan in equal rights. And so I think you all are really amazing, and I'm very thankful for each and every one of you. But now's the time. We see like so much happening with COVID, and you know, from just the part of my language, the shit that you hear and you see and you go through, and it's like, yeah, wow, we are so like a little bit disconnected, and to where like it almost becomes fearful. And it's like, you know, I can't live my life in fear, and I can't live my life in shame. And so I'm trying a whole new way about going about this, but I would love to pair with some of you and really let's take this to Capitol Hill, because there are huge violations, I feel, as us as individuals, and it doesn't give us much chance and much hope. What success are you giving somebody? What opportunity do we really have when we're, you know, almost not paired, not set up for what's the word I'm looking for failure, but almost set up for deception, you know? And I don't know the codes and the rules, and I don't know regulations, but for the longest time I felt alone. And there's so many of us that there's no reason anybody should feel that way. And here lately, since disclosing and being open, it's amazing the people that I have met, and I can't help but also feel their pain and their trauma. So like, right, this platform needs to be expanded upon more heavily. And I want to do my job. I want to take my place in being in the community and reaching out and really taking active part in this change, not just for myself, but for everybody else too, you know? Right. Sorry, but that's all I gotta say.
Okay. Well, and through the comments, some of your questions got answered. There is an age watch that happens like yearly, where they actually take the fight to Capitol Hill, right? And so how there will be training the first day on the different policies, what we're talking about, how it affects people living with HIV. You will be paired with people like in your state. You will be given a state delegate, someone that can keep you all connected, as well as like the other part, like when you're actually in the room, that's where you have the opportunity, because everything that they tell you is going to be on paper. They're going to have a folder for you to give hand off, right? But while you're in that room with that representative, that's your opportunity to bring your personal narrative into it, right? Because they have a face to it. And I didn't realize that until I was at an AIDS watch and had to talk to Senator Tom Cotton. And I'm there to talk to him about HIV. And much to my surprise, this man was almost as knowledgeable as I am about the trans community. I didn't know what to think, but like that was one thing. I mean, it made me see him in a whole different light. Like he sympathized with me on my gender identity. And who knows, it could have been the fact that there's someone in his family who identifies as trans. Maybe not a person living with HIV, but I had an in because I was willing to share that part of my identity in this office, right? And so thank you for adding that. Renae, the question actually was, when have you told your story and used it as a call to action?
I am so glad that y'all kept bringing up AIDS Watch. I think that it is one of the greatest things to experience as an activist, to be able to go on Capitol Hill or to your state lobby day. I think that is something that everybody should participate in. And like Tiommi said, the first couple of days you are trained on what is going to be the eggs. Normally you have an opener. You have two people who are going to share their story. Then you have the person that hands off the information. So you're not alone when you go to AIDS Watch and you meet with your representative. Even if it's your first time, you may sit back, or you may not be as outspoken as some, but you will learn, because it's a trained technique of having this opener, the two people share their story, and the person that passes off. But it's very important that that while you're telling your story, that you're concise, that you don't ramble. You may say, you may talk about after your diagnosis, you may not have had insurance. And you talk about Ryan White being the provider of last resort and how important it was that you were able to use Cobra or Ryan White to get your medications. So it's those little things that you tie in when you talk to them that gives them a buy-in to see you as a person who just needed resources, and just making sure that your story is tight and just knowing what you're going to say. And it's always going to be emotional telling someone about yourself, but I always tell people to try to find out about like Toastmasters or some kind of public speaking forum that will help you learn how to do more public speaking, so you know what's going to happen when you do it. And representation is so important. So I'll like that call to action to go to Capitol Hill and to go to my legislative plaza and go on these equality days and speak with people. That is when I feel the most powerful. That is call to action. And I always try to pull people into what I'm doing. I never go to anything alone, because I don't want to be that one it person, because we're not monolithic. Our stories are all going to different, but also interconnect some kind of way. So I always try to pull other people into doing. I'm like, what you doing today? You never been to Capitol Hill? Come on, listen. You never been to Legislative Plaza? Come on. It's Equality Day. It's LGBTQIA and Rare Disease Day. Come on, let's go on the Hill and learn something and find out how we can affect policy, because we can't do much of anything if we cannot affect the policies that affect us the most. So we have to level our power, which is our voice and our stories, to have a buy-in on how people are affected by these policies. So that's when I feel the most powerful.
Thank you so much. Now, I have this thing that I do, you know, where if we were in the hall, I would tell y'all this, you know, especially after telling my story, but like, oof, I need to go take care of myself. What that means for me is either I'm going to go find some way to decompress, right? I might roll me up a fatty. I might smoke a little vape. I'm serious. I might have me a drink, but I am really trying to get all of that out of my mind, right? And so, like I have, when I was telling my story, and let's just say like I was at a conference or something, then yeah, I'm going to try to find like a pool or something that is relaxing, something that does not have me in that same headspace. You know, because I tend to carry it. And if I'm not working with my therapist, I thank you so much, Julio, for bringing in therapy at the beginning of the conversation. Because my therapist has been a godsend, like having someone to talk to about issues that I'm having and help me to see it in a different way has also helped me like to prepare for situations that could arise, right, for me. And so I'm not asked to share my story as much, but now I have that like that added tool in my tool belt, which is therapy, to help me get through any situation before I'm even called to do it, right? And then like I follow that up with another therapy appointment, like after I get that thing done, right? But in the moment, I am really trying to like escape. That is real for me. Trying to get out of the room sometimes like without even acknowledging, you know, what it is that I've done or who I've impacted. Like I'm a ball of nerves and I hate being the center of attention. I truly, truly hate being the center of attention. And so there is no more attention getting than when you are in the middle of a room with spotlights on you and a podium and a microphone. And so I want to know, how do you all take care of yourself after telling a part of your story?
Well, I would say for me, I have learned to take care of myself before I start telling my story. Okay. And that was a learning process. I had to learn that. And make sure that I had to make sure I had good support in place. You know, support systems are good. Before I shared my story for the first time, my mother said to me, well, when are you going to tell your brothers and sisters? They can't read about it in the paper. Huh? You have to tell them. So I had to tell my brothers and sisters and the people that were close to me in my circle, because that's where you're going to get some of your support system from. Yeah, I was really surprised that I got a lot of support from my family. So that kind of strengthened me and fortified me. So, and I had to prepare myself to, now I know that anybody is going to tell this story, you have to be prepared for what's to come. Be prepared for the comments, the positive and the negative comments. Be prepared for people that's going to fall out of your life, because it's going to happen. Be prepared for people that's going to unfriend you on social media, because that's going to happen too. And it has happened to me. So once I prepare myself beforehand, then after I share my story, I think my spirit is kind of strengthened. Okay. And I'm not holding on to the pain. And then I can go, you know, love myself with my self-care practices. But yeah, for me, it's like, take care of yourself before, so afterwards won't be that much of a trauma. It's going to be some trauma, because, you know, and you have to realize that you're always going to have some triggers. Okay. Always going to, but you have to know how you're going to handle them. The triggers are going to come up. What are you going to do? Be prepared for them. Who can you go to talk to? Because these things are going to happen. There's one more story I want to share with you. In 2019, I went to this networking event. And I was sitting next to this lady. It was really crowded. And we were sitting like shoulder to shoulder, we were eating. So somebody came past and they said, well, Asha, how's your book doing? And I said, it's doing pretty good. So the lady next to me said, oh, you have a book, what's your book about? I said, it's about HIV. I said, I'm HIV positive. If I wasn't fortified, my feelings would have been hurt. She moved over, wasn't much space now. I thought she was gonna kiss the wall. She moved over, turned her plate of food over. She had no more conversation for me. But I chuckled because I felt sorry for her to be that ignorant in 2019. So be prepared before. And so afterwards, then you're a little bit more strengthened. That's my advice.
I love what you said, Asha. And I had a similar experience at some event, I think back in maybe 2014. And I was still kind of figuring out how open I was about my status. And this woman said something about, she's about sharing a cup. And I was like, first of all, lady, I don't know you. I wouldn't want to share a cup with you. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't strengthened. I wasn't fortified at that point. And I remember how that just hit me so hard, and, I think about someone in the media recently who said something and it rolled off of me, right? But I thought about the 20-something person that, maybe just got their status and might have been at that concert and what that was like for them, right? And so that's kind of the weird balance of why it's important to continue to show up, but show up in a healthy way. I have been sober now for 4 years and 2 months, and I have to really kind of pay attention to how I'm at and where I'm at and how I'm feeling, because a lot of my addiction got really deep sometime after that Emerging Leader Award, because I don't think I knew how to, I wasn't ready and I hadn't dealt with the trauma. And as it turned out, I had so much trauma. Like I didn't even realize things that I had grown up that I was holding on to. I didn't know how much they had been hurting me. And that, I needed to let certain things go. And I needed to appreciate the fact that while certain things happened, we're right here, right now, right? And that message of hope moving forward and being able to kind of, I'm going to give a plug to trauma-informed therapy again. I call it's like pulling weeds from a garden, right? You got to get in there and you get cut and it's dirty and it's messy and you got to rip and it's uncomfortable. But then you can plant the garden that you deserve and that you want to look at and that you love. And so along those lines, I am a plant daddy now. I have all kinds of crazy plants in the apartment. I'm learning how to play piano. And so I practice 45 minutes a day. After this, I'm going to do scales for 45 minutes because that's soothing and calming and beautiful to me. I have a recovery meeting tonight at 8:30 because I feel good. I feel great. I knew all y'all, we had all chatted. But I also didn't know. I was like, something may come up, and even when things are good, and even when you have a good experience, I'm a INFP. I'm an empathetic. Like I'm on the Myers-Briggs, so I'm very introspective, and then sometimes I just feel the weight so heavy. And so even if I'm having a good day or I have a really good experience, and this has been phenomenal, I still maybe need to be able to talk about it. And just kind of put a little bit of write a little epilogue and kind of close it and then kind of move on. But I think I learned all of those things in recovery. I learned all of those things in therapy. Like I learned that I had to ask myself, what do I like? Who am I? What bothers me? Like I didn't know. I was a 42-year-old person walking the planet and didn't know some of those really basic things. And so I feel very grateful that, to be able to share that part of my story as well, because I think that's important. I think a lot of people maybe don't hear that as much too. So know what you like and know how to take care of yourself. I bought a bike. There are times when I'm angsty or if I'm pacing back and forth. No, for real. Like if I get really in my head, I'm like, you know what? I'll get on the trail. and I'll go up a hill or do whatever, and I get that out. But like it's important to also be able to be honest with yourself about how you're feeling.
So, Julio, you kind of stole a little bit of my part. I'm an empath. So a lot of time I have to, and also I have social anxiety. So I'm already anxious. And a lot of time I feel stuff and I have to try to make sure I can identify what's my personal stuff from what I'm feeling from other people, that I don't internalize their stuff too heavy. So like every time I'm at events, I know it's gonna sound corny. I have to find out where the spiritual store is at. I have to have me some crystals. I have to go visit that place and come back with something. And also the last night I'm anywhere, I like to go and have a really nice dinner before I get on the plane. So I go. I'm very ritualistic, so I had to have those crystals, and I have to have that really nice meal. And I have this one person that I talk to a lot. She's a 73-year-old trans woman. Me and her, we talk about everything. We talk multiple times a day. And I try to pull her into as much as what I'm doing as possible to keep her relevant and keep her busy. But she always is my sounding board. And I always want people to know you have to have someone to talk to, because trauma is real and it's in our DNA. And we have to be able to work through those generational curses and realize that sometimes we're holding on to stuff that's not just our stuff, but it's stuff from the past, and we have to get over the past so we can have a clear future and be able to make a path for those that are coming behind us, so that it won't be so difficult for them to have to go through the same thing. We still have HIV stigma, and that story is from the lack of information, the lack of knowledge, the lack of empathy, and the lack of seeing people as being human, no matter what issues they have. And someone should sit down with him and really tell him, this is what you're doing, and you're doing it to a whole community of people, not just Black, just not gay, just not cisgender, not just transgender, all human beings that deserve to be loved and felt as whole people. And you're marginalizing a whole group of folks that's already going to be stigmatized for having HIV and AIDS and living with it. And we should be able to live gracefully, and have everything we need to survive without being marginalized while doing it. So that's how I take care of myself. Give me a good crystal clear one, and a nice meal, Chilean sea bass or something while I'm out, and I'm happy and having someone to talk to. And like Asha said, being prepared for whatever comes. And I believe in the 3 F's. If you don't know what they are, figure it out. And you have to let people know. Set your boundaries too. Make sure you set boundaries, because good boundaries will protect you better than anything else. Set boundaries with people.
Thank you for bringing that to the conversation. We are absolutely entitled to set boundaries in our interactions. And so that's even like in when we choose to share and not to share our stories, right? I have gotten great at boundary setting. And no is a complete sentence. It does not require an explanation, okay? No, period. If you're talking into your phone, no, period. No, full stop. Telegraph, however you want to say it. No means no, right? So with a little less than 15 minutes left for our time together, I was trying to go through the chat. So if anyone who has something that particularly resonated with them during the conversation, now is your opportunity to bring yourself off mute. If you're not comfortable coming to camera, that is okay. If you have a question for myself or one of the other panelists, this is also your time. You can come off mute, and if we have any questions, you can go ahead and start. I really love the fact that we were all so close to our crystals. For real. Right? As a matter of fact, I moved my room around and got them even closer.
Hi, Tiommi.
Hello. Let me see.
It's me, Sunita. I'm sorry I can't change my camera around.
Okay.
Having technical difficulties from Miami.
Okay, I understand. I do.
Yes, I like the subject. I really love this subject because I was thinking about everything everyone has said so far since I came on about how you could be shy and then you can bring out yourself doing the storytelling. But sometimes before you can tell your story, you have to really oof yourself up to tell that story. And I agree with Asha because yes, you will lose some friends behind, and then you will gain respect from others. You know, some people will honor you and some people won't honor you. But the ones who don't want to honor you, those are the ones you know are still not willing to learn or deal with this issue of the fact that, yes, you're positive. You know, they still want to be stigmatized. So I really wish the rest of my group was on here, Positive People Network, because I did send them the text. So, but maybe they had went to another Zoom. I don't know, but I'm glad to be a part of this group. So maybe next time we'll have some more people to be involved. But when I first told my story, I was nervous like I don't know what. Oh, yeah. And this was to a whole different, it was a church, actually. It was like, yeah, it was like the preachers was doing a rally for Fight AIDS. And I got up to tell my story, and because I was the candidate the health department picked. Mm-hmm. So I got up to tell my story, and then I'm sitting up there, and then all of a sudden I look across the room, I see my godmother's classmates, a whole table full of them. And I'm like, these are the same people I partied with. I'm like, are they still gonna respect me? So I went to the table, I'm like, hey, they're like, hey. They was, but after I had told my story, mm-hmm. They was the first ones to stand up and applaud it. The whole room applauded. Even some of the preachers that I knew who didn't know.
It would shock you who would be your allies in this
I
movement.
I love how spiritual everybody kind of is and how we all seek out that spiritual element. There's a couple things that I know I didn't have control of, but I know that God had control of because there were people brought into my life. One crazy happenstance was I took myself during recovery to Miami, Florida, and I happened to get on a bus with PWN members, and there was like 6 of us, and that was a great interaction. It was awesome. I was like taking it all in. It was all so surreal, but it was like kind of those little moments that my spirit guide, my spirit kind of enlightens me to, or just, it was amazing just to see some of the people that I have over the years and how they came into my life. But to everybody, all the ladies at PWN, that now was the time. Like God, he moves on his timeline, my God. And so I love everybody. Thank you everybody for everything. So
yeah, you better say that again.
Thank you.
God is on time.
I truly believe that, I made a promise. I made a promise to my higher power. At the time when I learned of my diagnosis, that if I got through it, because being trans, Black, living in Arkansas, not knowing anyone who identified as a person living with HIV, I had no clue where to turn. And so all I had at the time was my belief that this too shall pass. And so I made a promise to my higher power that if I got on the other side of this and not die, right, that I would promote as much education and awareness as I possibly could. And so I do believe that in the infinite wisdom that is the divine, it was divine intervention that made me come into contact with PWN. At that very first meeting, I met the co-executive director, Nana Kana. The very first phone call that came from PWN was with Wahida Shabazz El. The very first pull off to the side and hey, I think you would be great for this came from our very own Barb Cardell in the rain. And so I'm like, something is seriously wrong with this person that we're in the rain talking about advocacy and we're getting wet. so I owe all that I have grown to be, especially like in advocacy and storytelling and all of that, because I didn't even know that I had a story to tell. I didn't know that anyone would listen. And so I learned how to craft my story. I learned how to narrate my love letter to myself, because that's how I go into telling my story. You're going to love yourself through it, because there was a time when you did not love yourself. So you're going to love yourself through those painful memories. You're going to bring some humor into it. People are going to relate to what you're saying. And it's at those times like when you're done and I'm really trying to get out of there, that you see that you've had the most impact on people. I remember sharing my story one time, and a woman came up to me and told me that she completely changed her opinion of trans people because she was taught this because of religion, right? And apologized and embraced me. Now, I know that that was a very powerful moment, right? And had I not been there, if I had let the fear take over, that would have been a missed opportunity. I have seen this person go on to do so many great things, and was probably on that bus with you, Chris, was probably one of those people on the bus with you. And so like, there are just so many times when telling our story can be therapeutic, it can be cathartic, but also acknowledging that it can be traumatic. And so I think that the best tips that I've heard were to prepare yourself. I would say like an outline of what you're going to say, so that way you know how to navigate around traumatic parts while still being effective, right? While still having the intended impact. And so I hope that as we leave here, that all of us think of telling our stories as our personal love letters to ourselves, right? We've often been asked, what would we tell our newly diagnosed self, right? So I'm trying to move forward thinking that, like tomorrow I want to realize that I was really good to myself today, so that I can focus, so I can, repeat that effort, right? As we continue to go through advocacy, as we continue to go through all of these different partnerships. Those are my closing thoughts. And now I'll open it up to the panelists to provide any closing thoughts.
You don't know this, but the documentary that you and DeJarna in, I had did a discussion panel for it. I don't think you didn't make it to Memphis. And
I remember that.
And I don't think you made it to Memphis, but I think I can't remember his name. The Andre made it, and he sat by me, and I did the panel. I have that America in Transition in my scrapbook stuff, because I'm going to have it framed. Oh. And you don't know this, but I've been having it. It's in my closet with the rest of my stuff that I'm scrapbooking, because I don't like my trophies and stuff. I put all this stuff in the closet. I don't take it that seriously. But it's one of the things I hung on to. I was like, I'm going to have this frame. And,
thank you.
And you don't notice, but it's in my closet. I said, as soon as I can afford to have everything framed and matted, that's going to be one of the things I put up with my plaque, because your story was not just one of a kind, but also it represented being Black and trans and having these intersections that intersect and being a whole person and showing people that we are genuine, we're whole people, and that's important, because a lot of times we don't get to see people
Right.
that look like us, because people don't want us to exist, but we want to get everybody free. Even the most marginalized of us have to be free first, and us being free allow other people to be free, particularly Black and brown, trans folks, and women. Once we get that absolute freedom away from white supremacy and patriarchy and all these different types of misogyny and stuff like that, then everybody else can get free. And I want you to know, I have that poster. When I want to get it framed, it's still in my closet with the rest of my scrapbook stuff, but I want you to know that I have that in there. And you're an inspiration. And all of you are, in a way, you know, that we're doing this work and we are here to be transformed in the service of the work, to bring other people into it, to make sure that no one's left behind, and that we're making a path for those who have to come behind us. And maybe we'll get to a day where HIV doesn't have a stigma, and we don't have to disclose, and people don't have to be scared of loving us, no matter how we identify, our gender identity and sexual orientations. None of that. Just love.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. For my closing remarks, I would say to anyone who is thinking about telling their story, give it some careful thought. Know why you want to share your story, and make sure that you are the one that want to do it. Strengthen up your spirit. As I said before, be prepared. And if you're not ready for full disclosure, but you still think you want to share, write a blog, write a book, get a social media account and a pseudonym until you're ready. Okay. We have the power to tell our stories. I want everybody living with HIV to write a book, okay? At the libraries with our books, you know, because we are making history. We are really standing right in the middle of history. We're walking in history, okay? And we can control the future narrative of people who are living with HIV. I often wonder, like, okay, when this is over, what are they going to say about us? You know what I mean? So we have to control that, you know? And so I would say, tell your story victoriously, because people need to know and understand your victory.
You know, one other quick note also, by you saying that, is that, you know, now we are making history, and we're seeing, like, unfortunately, a downturn in with COVID-19 and the amount of people that are dying. And, you know, I look on the news, and my own governor is talking about there's two types of individuals, those vaccinated and unvaccinated. And so we're getting into those paradigms where we're starting to, you know, here's another contagious disease. And I don't know how much they looked into the HIV community for insight into that. But I don't like to see those labelings coming into play. And so I think now is the time to stand on these notions and the Denver principles. I thank God that those exist, and those existed long before me. And to those amazing people, and to the people that were alive when there was so much death and loss, like I can't imagine. So there are definitely people that I pay appreciation to, but we definitely have a lot of work, I think, still yet right now.
Thank you, Chris. Julio?
I just wanted to extend my gratitude for being a part of this. And first of all, Tiommi, for being asked by you, because in the work, you were one of the first people that I saw doing the work. And so to kind of have somebody who I admired think that I have something to share of value, it just kind of shows you how we uplift each other and how we can all be here and really help each other sort of grow into the spaces. I think my final sort of thinking on this is, I love what Asha said, because I actually been writing a lot lately, but it's just for me, it's written down and it's just, I get it out and it's very different from what people, well, maybe not, people that know me might expect it to be exactly how it is, because I've had some interesting experiences and life happen and stuff. And stuff that I don't believe and I was there. But I think the two sort of takeaways that I have for folks, even on the hardest day, even on the day when you share your story and you just don't know what happened, or you don't feel kind of particularly empowered or strong after, it touched somebody. Because if you're speaking from the heart, what comes from the heart reaches the heart. And so somebody will feel that, whether you even see it or don't. And I've had that happen to me recently, where I've had a couple folks that I've worked with who have really great titles and have gone on to do amazing things come back to me and tell me what my story and what believing in them and helping them see that they had a story meant for that. So even on those hard days, it means something to someone. I think the other thing I would say is that in addition to that, you never know who's watching or who's paying attention, right? When you're sharing, when you're living, when you're being who you are. And so if you can carry yourself not in shame, but walk in hope, that's going to make the difference for so many people, whether you actively tell them your story or whether they're just watching you be your story. So it's great. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was awesome. That was amazing.
Julio, I just want to say that my book started out as being a journal. And I journaled for 9 years. And I had to be ready even to publish a book. Just like telling your story, like speaking, you have to be ready to publish it too. Same thing.
Okay, Barb, you want to take us out?
Absolutely. Thank you so much to Renae and Asha and Julio and Tiommi for this amazing conversation today. It has been so powerful and exactly what we needed today. We had so many comments, so many people who really felt motivated. Many people are holding up their crystals as well, and so certainly appreciate that we talk about what do we need to think about for us that supports us as we are advocating for our community. So deep thanks and appreciation to our partners at AIDS United and the People Living with HIV Caucus, to our panelists today, for our folks who joined us both here on Zoom as well as on Facebook. Just want to let you know that we have our next community conversation coming up. It'll be in September. Right now it's tentatively set for September 3rd. It's going to be at 10 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern time, where we will be talking about the policy agenda, the Demand Better policy agenda that was put out by the PLHIV networks. And in particular, we're going to pull one part out of it, and we're going to talk about quality of life. When we talk about including measures that impact our quality of life and how we want to demand that those be in federal policies, ending the HIV epidemic strategies, all of those, what does that look like to us? So we will go ahead and share that information with everyone. And again, thank you so much to Tiommi, to Renae, to Asha, to Julio for sharing your wisdom, your heart, and just being so very, very present with us today. So grateful.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much, Julio, Asha, Renae, Barb. Thank you. Thank you to our interpreters, Ale. Thank you so much. We could not have done this without y'all.
Always a pleasure to be in the midst.